struggle to make your veins look truly realistic when using cream makeups? Cream makeup is probably the first makeup that you had encountered when starting with special effects makeup. It's super easy to use, comes in a ton of colors, and you can even have FX ready collections like Bruise wheels. And compared to a lot of other effects makeups, cream makeups are pretty cheap. The thing is, cream makeups can be thick, opaque, and sometimes just flat, which is why a lot of people eventually abandon most of their cream makeups and just start investing in more expensive alcohol activated makeups, because they can create a more translucent effect where creams a lot of times will just fall short. So how do you make creams look more translucent so your veining can look more convincing? The key to translucent effects isn't necessarily just, well, use less makeup. It has to do with how you apply it and methods used to dilute it. We're gonna aim for staining versus a solid block of color. You wanna thin your makeup down with 99% alcohol, or you can use something like Skin Illustrator Activator. I tend to favor Activator because it has less fumes than the 99%. And you're just gonna wanna mix a little bit at a time because the stuff is just gonna evaporate and start to flash off while you're applying your makeup. So there's really not much of reason to go ahead and mix a huge amount of it. You're just gonna wanna make it into a wash and think the consistency of watercolor. Want it very thin and almost see-through. It should dry quickly and essentially just look like it's leaving a stain on your skin as opposed to a solid color. And you can already see it's more sheer and translucent than if we were just to take it right out of the pot. And you can layer and build up the color as you want. Instead of diluting, you can also pick up the most minimal amount of pigment on your brush. You can clean off a lot of the excess product with either a paper towel or the back of your hand or a palette. You want just a touch of color on the bristles, applying it very light and building that color up gradually. You can lightly tap the makeup with your finger or a sponge to soften it. Now the veins start to appear more like they're under the skin. Another method to soften the veins is you can use a stipple or torn makeup sponge and apply a foundation color over top of those veins. This is gonna help to give it more of an uneven look and create some breakup so it looks more like those veins are going underneath that flesh tone color. The cool thing about this method is if you're doing a fantasy character and they have some crazy non-traditional color for skin, you can just use that skin tone over top of the veins and it will work. Now we talked about how to make them translucent, but let's talk about how to apply them to make them look more realistic. Definitely look at reference photos and even the back of your hand. Veins aren't just random squiggles. There's a system flowing from your heart out to your hands, feet, and head. Also, you should consider if this character is emaciated, you're probably gonna see a lot more veining. If you're doing realistic veining, your blues and greens are going to be great for those deeper set veins, and purples and reds are good for the surface level ones and capillaries. But if you're doing some fantasy origin character, I mean, the world's your oyster, do whatever color you want. For individual veins, a super fine tip brush is going to be your best friend. Smaller the brush is, the more control you're gonna have when painting those tiny little lines. Also, you wanna keep the pressure super light, and even at times, you might not even be putting makeup down. This is just gonna create variations in your lines, and that's gonna make it look more organic. Because variations in the thickness and changes in the color intensity in your veins, that's where the realism starts to come in. You're gonna want some that are super prominent and others that are barely visible. And you're also thinking about blood flow and pressure, and those larger veins are gonna be a lot more prominent. When working with cream makeups, translucent powder is a must. Because if you don't want those veins you just spent all that time working on to smudge and disappear, you need to make sure to set it and make it last. And if you want a little more durability after you powder it, you can always use a sealing spray. The more you experiment with different dilutions of your color and variations on how you're painting it, the more intriguing the look is going to be. And especially approaching it in a more translucent effect, it's so much easier to add color than to try to take it away and soften it all down. So definitely just start with the bare minimum. But you don't even have to paint veins, because if you click over to the next video, I will show you how you can create a really cool vein effect with zero makeup, and I'll see you there.